All right, parents, let's talk about teenagers. Let's talk about big emotions. Let's talk about anxiety. Let's talk about just exhaustion and teen burnout. Let's talk about the old attitude conversation. We're going to get into all of it with this educational video right here. And I got to just say this right out of the gates. I have 4 beautiful, wonderful kids. 2 of them are smack in the teenage years, 16 and 14. And then 2 that are a little bit younger yet and on their way there. And I think if I were to say to a group of fellow teenager parents, hey, this is pretty tough. This is pretty different. This is a whole lot different than it used to be when they were little. I think everybody would say the word that is on my shirt and say amen to that. Parenting a teenager is tough. Parenting, period, is tough. That's why we have our practice and our PX Talks platform where we're always making content, because what makes it even tougher is when our kids are sick, when they're stressed, when they're anxious, when they're depressed, when they're having behavior challenges or whatever it may be. And what is happening today is parenting teenagers has never been an easy job, but it's made so much harder because of how stressed out, how burnt out, and how dysregulated not only we are as parents, but they are as teenagers. This is a crazy world. The teenage time has always been a tough time. They're still growing, not just physically, growth spurts, growing pains, conversation, but they're really growing through their emotions, through their socialization, through their cognition. There's so many things within their nervous system, and we're gonna get pretty nerdy with this video. We're gonna really actually break down the science of teenage burnout, exhaustion, anxiety, depression with this video. But I also just want to flip your perspective for a second. It's the whole goal of this video is to not just do the science and get into the neurology of all this, but to share a blessing I've had during my journey as a parent. See, I've been a pediatric chiropractor for my entire career. As long as I've been a dad, I've been a pediatric chiropractor. Actually, a little bit longer, I've been a dad. My oldest, my 16-year-old, was born 2 weeks before I graduated chiropractic school. And we have a very unique path as chiropractors. Our specialty is autism, ADHD, anxiety, depression, epilepsy. My first tough, what we call perfect storm patients, were all teenagers. These were families who had tried all the traditional therapies, tried all the diet changes, tried all the medications, and they found neurologically focused chiropractic. Back then, it was even less heard of than now. It's exploding right now. Drug-free, neurologically focused healthcare, specifically this kind of chiropractic, is exploding in our parent and collective public consciousness now. But back then, these teenagers who were my first patients were a blessing, not only because we got to help them, but I actually was always learning. When you're a chiropractor, you develop really close relationships with the parents, with the patients, because we see them more often. And you better believe that the reason I'm always talking and always doing educational content for other parents about science, about health, about parenting, whatever it may be, is because I'm always learning. So as I'm learning, I'm sharing. That's how God made me. Where I'm going with all this in the teen burnout conversation is, I had an incredible conversation with a mom, Kelly, many, many years ago that changed my perspective, because her teenagers were in there getting adjusted with her. They've been wellness patients for us for a long time. And it was a tough moment. I could tell everybody was ticked off at each other and nobody was being nice to each other. And I made the classic kind of default, teenagers, sort of joke to her, because I didn't know any better. And she said, you know, if I could, you always help us so much with our health and and you're always educating and sharing with us about the nervous system. Your kiddos are still little, but if I could give you a look ahead, here's the truth about teenagers. Everything changes, but not everything has to. What Kelly shared with me is, yes, the conversations are going to get shorter. They're going to get a little more gruff. They're going to get different as your teenagers are going through these big emotional and hormonal changes. She said, but I stayed committed to adapting and changing with them so that our relationship could stay strong. Even though it's going to be vividly different, it's still going to be an incredible relationship that I have with them as teenagers, just like I had with them as toddlers when they were so dependent upon me, and I thought those times were tough. You think the baby not sleeping through the night, that is tough. You think the toddler is still figuring things out and you got to watch them 24/7, that is tough. The truth is parenting is tough, period. But what I'm here, and I know that's a long introduction to really get you to understand how much I understand as a dad and a doctor, that this parenting of teenagers is a tough go of it. Now make it twice as hard, 10 times as hard, because their nervous systems are tanked. See, today, too many teenagers are unhealthy, period. Their neurophysiological systems are way off track and out of balance. So whether we look at the stats or the science like we're going to in this video, that's what we got to figure out. So the American Psychological Association just came up with a report that said 1/3 of teens report feeling tired every single day. 31% constantly feel overwhelmed. 30% reported feeling depressed or sad as a result of stress. And during the school year, do you know that teenagers actually report higher levels of stress than we do as an adult? So what's going on? Now, there's two ways to look at this. We can blame what they're up against. Making new friends, not easy. Being involved with getting your grades, getting your sports, getting your extracurriculars, keeping up with the schedule that teenagers keep, not easy. Dealing with the hormones and the changes that are happening, not easy. Dealing with frickin' technology and social media and everything they're exposed to today, everybody likes to blame that one, and it's part of the perfect storm, but it's not easy as well. But we can't put our teenagers in a bubble. We can't protect them. They're not in that toddler stage anymore. We have to help them adapt. We have to help them become more resilient and build up their capacity to handle stress so they don't get so burnt out, so they don't get so anxious, and they don't get so depressed. And that is the 180 opposite direction that most of medicine or most of healthcare takes. We like to blame genetics for anxiety. When I say we, I mean medical system. Traditional medical theory still blames genetics for anxiety, ADHD, depression, and these things. They still blame it as a chemical imbalance instead of looking at what's actually causing that imbalance. So if I can have you for another 5 to 10 minutes on this video, I really want to break down the science behind your teen's burnout, dysregulation, anxiety, and depression, and give you the answers you've been searching for to help them get more energized, get better sleep, regulate their mood, have more energy, less anxiety, and more positivity. And here's the key 2 words to this whole video and every piece of content we make: without drugs, without medications. So first off, like we've already covered, it's more than just being a teen. If your mom and dad gut, as you see your kiddo be constantly exhausted, constantly anxious, and constantly worn down, if your mom and dad gut goes, there's something more going on here than them just being a teen, I want you to lean into that gut instinct and that innate parental feeling that you have right now and go all the way through this video and take the action after it, because you're right. Anytime your mom and dad radar goes off and says, okay, the rest of society says this is just normal. My baby's not supposed to sleep through the night and just be fussy all the time. That's why medical doctors say colic is normal, they'll grow out of it. Not the case. Teenagers are supposed to be moody and anxious and upset and dysregulated all the time. Not true. Not the case. If your gut says something's up here, something is up, and there's things you can do to help it. The second thing I want to really break down is what is the root cause? Well, the way that the nervous system works, and our nervous system regulates our mood, regulates our emotions, regulates our energy. So when we're talking about burnout, exhaustion, anxiety, depression, we are having a neurologically focused conversation. When medicine says that it's neurotransmitters, dopamine, serotonin, adrenaline, cortisol, and all these things that get out of balance, that cause behavior and emotional and mental health disorders, well, they're only halfway through to the root cause. Their theory of scientific neurotransmitter and chemical imbalance is accurate, but it is incomplete. The word neurotransmitters actually gives us the answer where we need to look and where we need to help our teens get better. Those transmitters transmit messages for the neuro system. So the central and autonomic nervous system has 2 modes. It's got our gas pedal, our anxiety, our fight or flight mode. You want your teenager, it's natural, it's normal, it's healthy to be in that mode in the middle of taking a test. You want their senses heightened. You want them focused extra. In the middle of a basketball game, in the middle of a performance, it's natural to have some sympathetic fight or flight, what's called tone, amped up a little bit. The challenge is our kids have been stressed for so long. We call it the perfect storm. They were stressed as an infant. They were sick all the time. They've had antibiotics that have destroyed their gut-brain connection. The gut absorbs 80 to 90% of serotonin and dopamine and connects through the vagus nerve to the brain. So when their gut's a mess, their nervous system's a mess, they've been stressed for a long time. And I know in a general construct, we think of stress as a grown-up problem, but it's a pediatric and it's definitely a teenager problem as well. So this buildup of chronic stress actually started way before the teen years. 90% plus of the case histories, and I've taken thousands of case histories on teenagers with Asperger's, autism, anxiety, depression, epilepsy. 90% plus had a really stressful early childhood and full childhood journey. So their early years were thrown off track with their development, and they were sensory processing challenges, speech delays, motor challenges, chronic constipation and immune challenges. Kids have been stressed and sick before they hit the teenage years. So it's natural, it's neurophysiological is what I would say. And I know that's a nerdy way of saying this, but what's happening to our teenagers is they're going through what we call falling off the sympathetic fight or flight nervous system cliff. Now, what does that mean? It means that our gas pedal, our fight or flight protective response that our kids naturally, innately have and need, is supposed to be activated short term and then turned off. They're supposed to live most of their childhood life in growth, development, relaxation, regulation, learning mode. And instead, kids today are stressed, stuck on fight or flight 24/7. So by the time they reach the teenage years, if you're on the gas pedal all the time, you eventually run out of gas. And that's what's happening with our teens. Their neurophysiological resiliency and adaptability is just flat out worn out. And here's 5 places that it first shows up. Sleep. Number one thing that teenagers are struggling with, the reason they're exhausted all the time, is that even if they're sleeping late and doing all those things we kind of, again, traditionally complain about, it's not about quantity of sleep only, it's about quality of sleep. And when a teenager's nervous system is what's called stuck in subluxation, meaning it's stuck on sympathetic fight or flight dysregulation all the time, they're not getting high quality sleep. And many of them aren't getting high quality sleep either. If your teen takes forever to fall asleep, if they wake up constantly through the night, that is a sure sign that their sympathetic fight or flight nervous system is stuck on. It's subluxated, which again is a word that just means that fight or flight stress mode is stuck on. Nervous system dysregulation, which is what causes teen burnout and all these challenges we're talking about, the real first sign of it is sleep disturbances. The second sign shows up in their gut. So if your teenager constantly, that study I was talking about before from the American Psychological Association said that 1/3 of teens also reported skipping a meal because their stress was so high. So what happens is the gut and the brain are connected through something called the vagus nerve. We have tons of great content on our website, pxdocs.com, or just here if you're finding this on YouTube or social. You can just scroll and find tons of content about nervous system dysregulation, the vagus nerve, and this condition called dysautonomia. It'll show up in the gut. They just don't get hungry. They don't feel good. So we've always everybody generally nicknames this as nervous stomach. What if you have it all the time? So this can lead to not just short-term eating challenges, skipping a meal, or making horrendous dietary choices, which again is sometimes we just chalk that up as, oh, that's a normal teenage thing. They're going to eat like crap. They're going to go to Panda Express and have Rockstar Energy drinks and Red Bulls. Yeah, if their nervous system is depleted and exhausted, of course they're going to go after the short-term, actually worse for them, Band-Aid fixes. That's why we're dealing with all this stuff. It's not what they're naturally programmed. Every single human being, period, no matter their age, when their nervous system is balanced, is actually attenuated to eat healthy foods, healthy fats, healthy proteins. So if your kids are making poor dietary choices and complaining of gut issues all the time, that's a sign of their nervous system being stressed out and burnt out. The third sign is actually physical pain. Do they constantly crack their neck or rotate their spine and try and crack their spine? People are like, oh, as a chiropractor, do you hate that? I do, not because of the physical, bony muscle components. It's That's a sign of nervous system stress just buried into that person or that teenager. And where's nervous system stress? Subluxation first going to show up in our neck and our shoulders. And our teens get worn out. No wonder they're addicted to not only Red Bull and bad food, but technology, because this fight or flight sympathetic nervous system, guess what the phone is? More fight or flight. Guess what the sugar is? More fight or flight. Nerves that fire together, wire together, and they get stuck there. So they actually, it's called a vicious cycle, or what we call the perfect storm. They actually start to crave the things that keep them stuck there. The way we're designed, the way God designed us, is nerves that fire together, wire together. I've said that a few times in here. That can be used for good, or in this case, it can lead to unwanted outcomes as well. The fourth sign is going to be classic irritability, agitation, big mood swings. And again, are you going to have a different mood and a different vibe going for your teenager? I don't think actually teenagers say the word vibe anymore, but I'm gonna, because I'm 42, not actually a teenager. So what I think teenagers say, by the time I figure it out, they've moved on to the next terms. So I don't think they really use the whole vibe conversation anymore. But if I should stop with it. If their mood, their energy, their emotional status is more off base than your mom and dad got, like we talked about before, feels like is normal, it is abnormal. And it's something that when we get to these action steps, you really want to take and go forward with to help them out. And the fifth one then, besides the mental, emotional agitation stuff, is again, like we talked about, they're just dysregulated all the time. Their mental health, their focus, their concentration. So it's the emotional side and kind of separating out here with the fifth one, the mental. So do they have brain fog? Do they used to love school and thrive and now they struggle? Well, that's a sign of their nervous system being out of balance and tapped out as well. So what does all this mean? What can we do to help our teenagers without medications? I gotta tell you, I am wildly blessed to be a nervous system focused pediatric chiropractor and a parent at the same time, because I'll just cut right to it for the action step. Adjusting my teens helps them immeasurably. I can literally track as my teenagers' mood gets a little more out of balance, swings a little more wildly than it should. Their energy, their posture, their physical appearance starts to get stressed, gets exhausted. I know they need to get adjusted. Luckily, they're on what's called a regular wellness schedule of adjustments, but sometimes it's finals week. Sometimes it's a big basketball tournament. Sometimes their friends are not being cool. Sometimes 16-year-old girls, not the nicest to each other, all right? And so I can tell when my kids need extra adjustments, but we've been so blessed because these teenage years for us, they're way different than the toddler years. It's definitely harder in a different way, same as it's better in a lot of different ways. Our relationships with our kids are freaking fantastic right now because they're growing up and they're getting on our level. So we're doing life together in a different way, a beautiful way, an awesome way. And because I can get them adjusted and get their stress, get their subluxation, get their nervous system dysregulation out of their way, things are still really, really awesome in our household right now. And I know this is a longer, nerdier video than maybe you'll find from most people who would talk about teen burnout and go, oh, it's social media, it's their phone's fault, it's Red Bull's fault, and medicine would go, it's genetics' fault, it's dopamine and serotonin and chemical imbalance, there's nothing you can do, give them medications. Yeah, those wear out over time. Now kids need more. They get addicted to them. The side effects are nasty. We're talking about getting to the real root cause and drug-free natural options for your kiddos with teen burnout and exhaustion. And so the first thing we do is we get kids neurologically focused adjustments. Our kind of chiropractic knows exactly where these subluxation and these tension and exhaustion points are, and we know how to make wildly safe, wildly effective adjustments to release that sympathetic stress and to stimulate what's called the vagus nerve, which is the social, emotional regulation side of the nervous system, the rest, digest, relax, and regulate side of the nervous system. So when you take your teen to a neurologically focused chiropractor, like at our practice PWC or throughout our PX Docs network, it's a totally different kind of chiropractic adjustment than one for, grown-ups, old people with back pain, okay? It's a neurologically focused adjustment designed to take the sympathetic fight or flight stress down, that has been running their life for too long and has run them down, and boost up their vagus nerve and parasympathetic tone. And the second thing, and my favorite, probably because I have two right now, and it's what I do all day as a dad, it's one of my favorite groups, if not my favorite group of patients to serve and care for right now, because we don't just adjust them, but we have a cheat code in terms of empowering, educating, and getting them interested and engaged, would be my word, in their own healing process and their own health, and making better diet choices, making better sleep choices, making better lifestyle choices. Right now, if it sounds like I'm talking about a pipe dream, hang with me. I got one more minute to send you into action, parents. We get to cheat as their trusted doctor, their pediatric and family chiropractor, because we're not their parents. Have you ever noticed that other people's kids listen to you better than your own kids? Actually, this isn't even just a teenager thing. I find that to be with all kids of all ages. Well, we get that job as the chiropractor for a teenager. And so you better believe we take our job seriously, helping your family, helping your kids. We know how much you want to see them smiling again. We know how much you want to see them sleeping again and able to regulate their emotions, get rid of their anxiety, beat their depression without medications. We know how much you want to see your kiddo, your teenager, go from struggling to thriving. And we've been blessed to be the catalyst, to be the chiropractor that helps get that job done in partnership with parents and other providers thousands of times over the years. And the cheat code we have is we get to know them. We build a really great relationship with them. We ask them, what are your goals? What do you love? What would you do all day if you could? And we anchor them getting healthier to that. We don't tell them something's wrong. We don't tell them you're out of balance, you're broken, your genetics are crap, you're going to be depressed your whole life, you're going to be anxious your whole life, your aunt was depressed and your grandpa was anxious, so boom, it's genetic. We don't let our teenagers have a victim mentality. We empathize with them, and then we empower them, and then we engage with them, and we get them moving forward. We get them to take proactive responsibility with their health. Now, again, you're thinking, that sounds too good to be true. Well, the first step is our cheat code to the second step. When a teenager gets adjusted, they feel incredibly better because their nervous system functions incredibly better. There's a word, last word in this whole long video, called momentum. Your teenager has negative momentum right now. They're getting worse. They're getting more exhausted, more emotional, more anxious, more depressed. Adjustments done by a neurologically focused chiropractor build momentum. It's the natural neurophysiological effect of an adjustment done correctly. It can't not happen. We know that's happening, so we start with that, and then we build the education. Then we build the empowerment. Then we build the teenager into the plan with them, and we see these kids go from struggling to thriving. If you need those two things in your teenager's life, neurologically focused adjustments to just release and get rid of the stuck stress on their nervous system and restore and boost their healing, social emotional regulating system, and you want a doctor who's not going to tell your teenager everything that's wrong with them, but instead focus on everything that's awesome with them and get them moving towards that, which also gets them moving away from their struggles, then you need a PX doctor in your family's life. If you're local, outside of Chicago, to us, PWC Chiropractic is the place you want to comment below and get connected with if you're watching this on our page or our platform. But if you're not local to me, do not worry. We have trained thousands of other neurologically focused pediatric chiropractors in the protocols and in this work. And if you're watching this on our PX Docs platform, comment below, send a DM, follow the links, go learn more. Yes, we have tons of articles about all the science and all the neurology that I talked about here if you need even more information than this video provided. But if you're just ready to get your kiddo that drug-free hope, answers, and help you've been searching for, scrolling for, praying for, then get over to pxdocs.com, get to the directory, plug in your city and your zip code, and get your child scheduled with one of our docs. I think if there's one group of kids that you really see the power, really see the transformative capacity of neurologically focused chiropractic care, it's teenagers. They deserve it Today, they so need it. And I'm so glad you found it with this video, our practice, or your local PX docs. Comment below if this was helpful. Please share this with other families of teenagers who you know need this long, detailed, sciencey, but real life conversation from one dad, from one parent to another. Thank you for watching this. Thank you for doing all you do for your teenager to thrive and be healthy. Thanks for sharing this, and we'll see you on the next one.